Okay, on this on this lesson, we're going to be continuing with factoring polynomials. So this is also a review, but today we're going to be looking at only binomials that we're going to be factoring. So there's three different types of binomials that we can factor: difference of squares, sum of cubes, and difference of cubes. So remember, a perfect square is a number that we can take the square root of. So it's a number that we have two of the same that we can multiply together to give us that. And same thing with perfect cubes. So a number times itself to give us a perfect square, a number times itself 3 times to give us a perfect cube. So example 1, first off, you always check for GCF first. Notice they don't have anything. Then we're checking for either difference of squares, since we are subtracting, or difference of cubes. You should always look for squares whenever there's an x to the 4th. So 81 is a perfect square, so we're going to set up two binomials. We take the square root of both. So the square root of x to the 4th is x squared. Square root of 81 is 9. We add 1, subtract the other. That's exactly what it tells us up here. Now, when you start out with an x to the 4th, chances are you're going to be able to go again. Okay, so you're looking for only difference of squares because you can't factor sum of squares. So this one I'm going to rewrite, and then I can continue on with this one. So that would be x plus 3 and x minus 3. And that's as far as we can go. And just a reminder, we can always multiply it back together. It should give us back the original. Okay, let's try another one. So we are subtracting. We need to check for perfect squares since it says x to the 4th. 16 is a perfect square. So that would be x squared plus 4. X squared minus 4. So again, always check when you're starting with x to the 4th, see if you can continue on. Notice this is also difference of two perfect squares. So I'm going to rewrite the first one because we can't factor sum of squares. And then we can factor this one to x plus 2, x minus 2. Because when we multiply them together, it gives us back x squared minus 4. And that's as far as we can go. Okay, another one. So this one, notice it has an x to the 4th. We are subtracting. 4 is a perfect square, so is 9. So we can factor it. So that would be 2x squared. And then plus 3 minus 3. Okay, so looking at it, we have a difference, but 2 is not a perfect square, neither is 3. So that's as far as we can go. So sometimes you can continue on, sometimes you cannot, but you need to check for that. Okay, so those are difference of squares. Now let's look at sum of cubes. So we're going to be adding, and then we're going to have two perfect cubes, which is a number times itself 3 times to give you that number. So a good way of remembering to check for cubes is if you have an x cubed. First thing you check for is a GCF, but they don't have anything. So I'm going to take, you can use a calculator if you need to, take the cube root of 27. It is 3. So when I take the cube root of the first term, that's 3x, because 3x times 3x times 3x gives us 27x cubed. And then you're going to take the cube root of 512, which is 8. 8 times 8 times 8 is 512. You always want to use the same sign on the first one. So remember, we talked about this before. We use SOAP to remember the signs. First one is the same as the original binomial. Now I'm going to set up a trinomial. So remember, anytime you're dealing with cubes, you should have a binomial for your first part and then a trinomial for your second part. It's the same every single time. So to get this term, I'm going to square 3x. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. Then I'm going to multiply these two together to get my second term. So 3x times 8 is 24x. And then you use the opposite sign for the second one. So that should be a minus. So it needs to be the opposite. To get the last term, I'm squaring that last number. So 8 times 8 is 64. And the last one is always positive because you're having to square. Now, the great thing about cubes is once you factor cubes, you will not be able to factor anymore. You're welcome to check it, but they're usually whenever you are factoring cubes, that's as far as you can go. Let me erase that S there. And then to check it, you could always multiply these two together and it should give you back the original. Okay, another example. So we should check for cubes. Cube root of 8 is 2, so that would be a 2x. Cube root of 27 is 3, and we use the same sign, so plus 3. And then we should have a trinomial. So binomial, then a trinomial. To get this term, we square 2x, so 2x times 2x is 4x squared. We multiply these to get the middle, so 2x times 3 is 6x, but we do the opposite sign, which is minus. And then we square the last term in the binomial, and 3 times 3 is 9. It's always positive. Again, once you have factored cubes, then that's as far as you can go. You can always check it by multiplying it back through and combining like terms. Okay, so last one for sum of cubes. So we have an x cubed, we have a 216. You can take the cube root of 216. So cube root of x cubed is just x. Same sign, so plus. Cube root of 216 is 6. And then we have a trinomial. Remember, it's always a binomial. And then we use that binomial to find the trinomial. So we're squaring x, we get x squared. We multiply x and 6 to get 6x. And it's the opposite sign, so minus. And then we square the 6 to get positive 36. So that's sum of cubes. Okay, let's look at difference of cubes. So we're subtracting, we have an x cubed. So we need to check for perfect cubes. So cube root of 64 is 4, so 4x. Cube root of 125 is 5. We use the same sign, so minus. So we have our binomial. We're going to use that to find the trinomial. So we square 4x. 4x times 4x is 16x squared. We multiply these to get, now that's, excuse me, negative 20x, but we do the opposite sign and put plus 20x. And then we square negative 5. Negative 5 times a negative 5 is positive 25. Okay, next one, we have x cubed. 1 is a perfect cube because 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. So that would be x. Use the same sign, minus 1. Trinomial. So we square this, we get x squared. We multiply, we get plus x because it has to be the opposite sign. And then negative 1 times a negative 1 is a positive 1. So sum and difference of cubes are factored the same exact way. The difference is the signs. Same sign for the first one, opposite sign on the second one, and then the last one's always positive. All right, last one. So we have an x cubed. We want to check for cubes. 343 is a perfect cube. When you take the cube root of 343, you get 7. So x, same sign, minus 7. And then we use that to find our trinomial. We square, we get x squared. We multiply, we get negative 7x, but it has to be the opposite here, so plus 7x. And then negative 7 times a negative 7 is a positive 49. Again, you can always multiply it through, and it should give you back your original. So real quick, let's just check that. So x times x is x cubed. That would be 7x squared. That would be 49x. Negative 7x squared, negative 49x, and negative 343. So notice those cancel, we're left with the original. So that's a great way of checking your factoring. Make sure that they equal. When you multiply it back together, it should equal the original. Okay, so that was the continuation of factoring. If you have any questions, please let me know.